Welcome everybody to another Wizard session. This is our last one of the year. It's December. As Tony pointed out a few minutes ago, it's almost Christmas. Single digits left. Hopefully, assuming you celebrate Christmas. Hopefully you've got all your shopping done. You're ready. I'm not, but that's how it goes. Uh, as always. We like our forward-looking statements here, and especially today we're going to be talking about proposed data, right? That's forward-looking. Um, so the product statement. Don't make any purchasing decisions based on anything we say or do here. IntelliJ plugin looks like it has not been updated since our last call. It is still 3.75.3. If you haven't updated it, you're probably not using IntelliJ a lot. So probably okay. If you do go to use it, just make sure you get that plugin updated so you avoid any problems. DevRel, lots, lots for DevRel to talk about today. Nick, do you want to share or do you want me to keep sharing this?
Yeah, I'll let you keep sharing.
All right, cool.
And then Tony, I'll let you talk about your piece. But the first one up top, it's hiding right now. It's a little line by Chris's face. DPUC webinar series. So we are growing up and actually having a proper registration invite for the developer program update call starting next month. And believe it or not, if you are kind of out of pocket, at least mentally out of pocket the next couple weeks, which I totally understand, it's going to be here pretty soon. So it'll be here the second Tuesday of January. I believe that is the 13th. So relatively generous with the way the Tuesdays fall. But even so, that's coming up pretty darn fast. So if you are expecting a Magic ICS file, right now it's going to be a Magic registration link. So I would love for you to click on that link, tell your friends, tell your neighbors. Greatly appreciated. And we will see you there in the new year. And then I'm sure Tony, I would love for Tony to be able to speak to his bit.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So if you guys haven't joined me yet on my live stream, I'm streaming every morning, kind of building all kinds of fun stuff, as well as answering any questions that come across the chat. Would love to have you guys jump on and say hi, or just kind of hang out, have a cup of coffee, and watch me fiddle away at all the fun stuff. Tomorrow we'll be messing with the new business objects with rich text functionality. So cool stuff there,
Ooh.
and lots of fun stuff to come. A little sneak peek as well. I'm going to be releasing a series of videos I call the Breaking Ground series within Workday Build, essentially covering a lot of elementary stuff to get our newer folks up to speed and building in Workday Build. Those are not on the forum yet, but keep your eyes peeled. Earlier or later this week, those will be available as well as on my YouTube. So come check it out, and I hope to see you guys on the stream.
Awesome. I will testify that being able to do a little bit of Christmas shopping, don't tell Ryan Basilio, but being able to do a little bit of Christmas shopping before Pleasanton was awake and get to see Tony talking about FlowWise was actually really delightful. So, highly recommend 10 out of 10 experience. I think Tony's always looking for co-hosts too, if you want to join him and build something live. It's pretty fun.
Absolutely, for sure.
Nice. Well, if you guys wouldn't mind drilling into that next one for the 2025 favorite feature poll, I love the PlayStation Access community. They did this on their podcast, and I was like, we have to have it. So there's a spoiler there because this person's already voted. But if you were to hide that, or if you have not yet voted, it will show in a random order. So pretend you don't see anything. And we have listed all of the product updates that have happened this year and we would love for you to share which one is your favorite. And especially if you could just tell us something about why or keep talking in the chat. A lot of good stuff has happened. It's great when you kind of see it in one place and step back and think, holy crap, we couldn't do any of these things a year ago. So, super proud of what our products teams have delivered. Would love to celebrate that with you here. Tony, myself, and the other advocates will be chatting about it on one of our upcoming Dev Talk episodes. So, make your voice heard. We're going to leave this open until we record that episode.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, buddy. So a couple rhyming updates here. So next week is our last officially branded Orchestrate KSS call. It is the end of an era. You can pour one out, but it's actually the start of a new chapter. The KSS call, as it was, is morphing into something we're calling DevRel Deep Dives, run by Dan Pazahosky and team. If you know, you know. They are excellent, excellent individuals. It's also going to be a webinar like this call, like the DPUC. It's going to be highly interactive, and it's going to be really, really cool. It's going to expand its scope a bit to cover all things build. So we're really, really looking forward to that. That'll be on the fourth Tuesday of the month, like it is today. So we will send that info out when it's available. Just know that it's not a goodbye to the KSS per se. It's a see you later. So I hope you will join our developer relations engineering team on that call the fourth Tuesday of every month.
Do we do we have any insights into what Marek might be talking about next week? I kind of seeded what I was hoping he was going to talk about there in my question.
Ooh, off the top of my head, no. So that's
No?
my
Okay.
bad. But we will
I'm
check.
hoping he's going to cover Insights API, but we'll
I'd be
see.
shocked if it didn't come up. I think if you yelled at him loudly enough, he would show it to you. So,
Yeah, I'm trying to manifest it by bringing it up. That maybe he'll
yes,
KS will
Todd
cover Orchestrate
confirms.
Insights. Thank you, Todd.
Boom. As always, thank you, Todd.
Nice.
Righteous individual.
Cool.
Yes, and more good news. DevCon 2026, the dates have been released. So June 1st through 4th, 2026 at Resorts World again. Even better this time. So it's going to be really, really awesome. If you could just hold that spot on your calendar, we'd greatly appreciate it. There's a save the date link. If you
2026.
2026, I know,
Sorry.
right? Said that right, right?
Try that again.
Oh, got it. It's like, do I need to try it again? Do you need to try it again? Do we all need to try it again?
Me. It was me.
Yeah, I can't
That
keep
was
track
me. I'm
anymore,
always the
man.
problem.
So next year, 6 months from now, yikes, it will be back at Resorts World Las Vegas. You will see some amazing folks there. It's going to be really great. Speaking of manifesting, we are manifesting a new developer blog, likely on Workday.com on some prime real estate. This will be a public column, is the way I'd think about it, by developers for developers. Everything from here's how I built this cool thing to my name's Clint. Here's how I moved past writing spaghetti code to helping other people write slightly less spaghetti code. Like, it's all good. The point is that it's by us for people like us, and they're staying out of the way, which is pretty amazing. This is a corporate website, but it's going to be highly dev facing content and public AF. So it's a good opportunity to get your name out there as well. Our goal is to get like 20 plus folks that like contributing to it. The more the merrier, and we can all kind of get in a rotation. I think it'll be really, really lovely. So, big shout out to the thought leadership team that is granting this to us aspirationally coming in February. Safe harbor emoji.
Nice.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. Steaming right along, we have revamped the Dev Talk podcast. You can see our most recent episodes right there on YouTube. Yes, that is EE talking about how Workday Orchestrate is changing everything. Believe it or not, it is the top performing video on the Workday YouTube, which I think is pretty badass. We also have an episode with Rita Alhaitmi from Workday Rising, talking live at Rising about all the amazing stuff in Workday Build. Chris, I heard you were on the show. Is that true?
Yeah, it was really fun. I'm looking forward to the episode coming out.
Yeah, it was super fun. And I fully agree. So we have a few awesome episodes in the hopper, including one with Chris. Anybody who wants to be on the show, just reach out to the Dev Advocate team. Clint, you can reach out to the team. We'd love to have you. It's a great time. They let us just chat and have fun. I tell people we have the most fun out of anybody at Workday. And it's true. And now it goes on YouTube. So very much love that. And I think, Tony, unless you got anything else, I think that's all from us. We just wish you a happy end of the year and happy holidays. And there's even more good stuff that I can't talk about yet, but I promise it's all good stuff.
Well, I'm excited. Thanks, Nick. That's a lot of good stuff from Devrel.
Heck
We'll
yeah,
have to
man.
talk about. End of your wrap
A
up.
lot.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much. Don't forget to take the poll.
Yeah. Jeff Haynes You see your hand raised, Mr. Haynes. If you have a question, you can throw it
Gosh.
in the chat.
The Jeff Haynes.
The Jeff Haynes, right?
Holy
We have
moly.
some pretty prestigious attendees here.
I know.
All right.
Amazing.
So product updates. We got some exciting updates recently. Orchestrate inside APIs. I'm not going to talk a lot about these because Mark's going to talk a lot about these next week. And he knows a lot more about them than I do. I'm certain of this. There's a couple things I did want to talk about. So these APIs allow you to get information into your Orchestrate runs, right? What successes, failures, different statuses with your completions. You can observe at the organization level across all your applications. You can go specific applications, you go tenant, so that you can narrow down from the organization level. I think these are going to be very useful for folks who want to monitor their systems, and especially with orchestration becoming the first class, right? Custom go-to for all your custom integrations, right? Orchestration is going to be used for everything across the board for custom integrations going forward. So the documentation here, pretty good docs, as always. I'll go and post a link in the chat. Just a couple things I wanted to note. Right. So here's the endpoints that are available. We can get data at the organization level for the apps. And what it's going to return to you is a list of applications that have had orchestration runs in the last 29 days. And you can give date ranges for start and end, as well as just like active as a parameter on these. It's very easy to use. The API documentation is also available for this, so you can look at those. So we can get specific tenant information, or you can go to a specific application and get its orchestrations, or you can go to a specific orchestration and get its information, right? And that's going to be helpful because you don't always necessarily want to drill down into, say, an orchestration that increments a sequence generator, right? I don't necessarily need to know much there. But if I've got a boomerang, especially something that's high volume, that I probably want to know a little more information about it as far as its analytics go. Now, one thing that you need to know here is when you do the tenant specific runs, right? If I'm saying I want to just look at my production tenant for a specific orchestration, you're going to need to use, for some of these endpoints, you're going to need to use your WCP org UUID. You don't need it if you are just looking like at all apps or specific apps orchestrations. But when you start drilling into the tenant specific filter, you have to have this as a header in your API request. How do you get that WCP org UUID? You can actually look while you're logged into DevSite. I'm going to show you real quick how to do it in two different browsers. I'm running Firefox here in this main one, so I'm going to show you how to get to it in Firefox, and then I'll show you in Chrome. So we have the settings menu up here in the corner. Then we go down to more tools towards the bottom. And the first option here after customize is the web developer tools. So we're going to open that up, and there's a bunch of tabs here, and you want the storage tab, okay? And on the left side panel, you're going to see cookies, and underneath cookies, we've got developer.workday.com. That's the one we want to look at. There's going to be a bunch of stuff in here. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And what we want to find is this WCP org UUID value. Okay, now there's a value column. You're going to just want to grab that value from the value column. Okay, that's the value you're going to need to send over as a request header when you are making those calls. Okay, so that's how you get to it in Firefox. I'll show you if I can move this stupid Zoom thing out of the way. All right, Chrome. Okay, similarly, up in the upper right-hand corner, we're going to get our menu and go down to more tools. And under more tools at the bottom, instead of the top in Firefox, developer tools. Okay. Now it's in a slightly different location than how Firefox does it. Go to this application tab. under storage, cookies, and again, the site we want, developer.workday.com. And we see we have this WCP org UUID, and you can grab the value. And they make it easier to copy because you can get it down here at the bottom. So that's how you do it in those two browsers. If you're using a different browser, it's going to be very similar. Just look for your dev tools, maybe called something slightly different, but that's going to be the general way to find it. And of course, if you don't know exactly where to look, just jump on Google. Should be easy to track down. Grab that value. It's going to be a static value. That value is not going to change. So if you're building an app or an integration or something, stick it in an app attribute. You're good to go. All right, so that's all I'm going to talk about around the Insights APIs. I do want to shout out, where can we find the documentation that lists the current time limits for orchestration and overrides? The dev site has that, and I'm sure somebody on the call can dig that up. It is in the dev site documentation though around the orchestration time limits. All right, so there is a forum post. I'm gonna throw this in the chat, and Paula, if nobody finds it before I finish, I will go find it for you. All right, so we have this poll. Actually, it's forum that Workday put out. Amanov posted this. He's one of the PMs. Workday looking for help in understanding how people want to use the APIs to retrieve logs to do things like data ingestion, right? So think like the Insights APIs, right? It's kind of thing that it's been a big ask for a long time. So this Workday saying, hey, give us some more information about what you need, how you want to use this stuff. I really encourage people to go fill this out, right? This is your opportunity to give Workday direct feedback that can be actionable, right? You could see some feature or way you want this implemented to actually happen by taking the opportunity to let them know how you want to use this, right? Workday definitely listens to this kind of feedback to help mold these features. All right. Now, I think that's all I had to cover. So I'm going to kick it over to Clint, who is going to talk about a specific design pattern around using proposed data objects. Let me stop sharing. All right, take it away, Clint.
Let me just move a couple of windows around here. Get me some annotations because you know I like to scribble. All right, everybody. I recently have started watching Ted Lasso, so I just got through the romantic comedy episode, so I had to do something with this one for the proposal. And of course, you know, Ryan Reynolds, solid Canadian, so tried to send him a BP, he denied. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about some business process design patterns. So there's a lot of different things that we can do with business processes and how they actually go to all the different ways that they interact with model objects. I'm going to start off with a simple one because it's the one that most of us have used before. It's the one I actually taught for quite some time. Then I'll briefly cover the status code pattern, but we've already covered that in a fair amount of detail. So I'll just sort of point you out where you need to go to look that one up. And then I'll talk about the current and proposed design pattern. Let's start off keeping it simple. The simple part is honestly where most of us start and stop. We don't need to go much further than this. I'm going to use some flowcharts here to walk through how the process actually happens. And this is actually a throwback to a KSS that Christian Hopkins did a really long time ago and that kind of got lost in one of the community rebuilds. So I'm trying to recreate some of the amazing flowcharts that he did. And Christian, if you hear this, if you still have those flowcharts, please post them up because they were seriously choice. So let me get, all right, color going here. Let's use some green. So let's start with the simple model object to business process design pattern. We're going to create an instance in our model component business object. We're then going to feed that into a business process, and this whole flowchart represents our business process. We're going to create that instance for our model component business object. We're going to trigger it and kick off an approval step. Now, if the manager denies, we'll give them the deny option. Process ends, nothing goes any further, and this something happens doesn't actually happen. But if the manager approves, then something happens. This is the design pattern that you see in the tuition reimbursement reference app. Just give you an idea of where you can go see this, and you'll see this. I'll show it to you here in just a second. This is often good enough. This allows us to collect an approval. This allows us to set up an instance. This allows us to do things quickly and easy. It's fast and easy to code. It's got a couple of loopholes in it. We'll take a look at those. But for the most part, it's a reasonable way to go. Let's take a look and see what that would actually look like in code. So in code, I've got a model object called meal benefits. So we're going to have an object here called manage meal benefit. That's the security domain for it. We're going to have a worker, we're going to have a date, and we're going to have a cost. This is then going to have a page that allows us to create a meal benefit request, and we can go and create a request. It's going to get fed to our manager. Our manager is going to approve or deny, and then this would typically have some extra add-on step beyond that. So let's take a look at that in a tenant. So let me just start up a proxy here. Rachel's going to claim a meal. She can pick a date. This has got a limit on it that says it can't exceed $25. So she has a $22 meal. It's okay. And this gets sent out to her manager for an approval. Who's Steve Morgan. Sees all the information, hits approve. Yay, no problem. Quick, easy, simple. So where's the bad? Why would we think about going any further than this? Okay, it's, as Tony said, single digits to Christmas. Does anyone want to see the naughty that can be had here? I have a special dispensation from Workday Santa to show you the naughty list. Let's jump into what sort of naughty things we can get up to. So if I take a run here, is that canceled? Of course it's canceled. One moment, please, whilst I go grab a fresh token. It's going to be unhappy with me because I'm still proxied, making me work for it. So here's the meal benefit that we just put in. Now the bad here is this is approved. This is presumably already gone through somewhere, but I still have the ability to edit it. So let's say I'm just a little bit sneaky. And I say, you know what? I can patch this in and make it 5,000. Of course, I'd have to do the auth here as well, wouldn't I? Oh, so now I've updated it. It's now $5,000 in there. Now, is this terrible? Not really. The audit log will show that the object was created, the approval was had, and now it was changed. But it means that I can still change this behind the scenes. And there are circumstances where that's going to get you in trouble. That's going to be something that it's not going to work so well. So this sort of nefariousness, in most cases, not a big deal. For a $20 easily audited meal benefit, this is probably just fine. But if it were something where it would be harder to audit, what I'll show you in a little bit here is commission percentages. If we're looking at commission percentages, maybe my payroll team doesn't know what the range should be for this particular group of sales folks. They can't just say, "Oh yeah, that's way out of whack." I mean, for a $20 meal benefit, if you're seeing $5,000, something's wrong. And the other question is, who's going to risk, getting fired over something like a meal benefit? Pretty rare. So while the audit works for this simple design pattern, it's got some downsides. I'll say there's ongoing changes are difficult. You can update after the approval. Yeah, the audit allows you to catch that, but somebody has to watch that audit, and that's dangerous. You want your meal benefit of $1 million. Ooh, billion. I guess that's improved. Inflation. Now, there's an intermediate step. That's starting off with the simple stuff. We're now going to talk about status codes. I could put a status code on that page. Now, we've done a lot with this, but what does the design pattern look like? The design pattern looks like this. We're going to take an object, we're going to put a status code on it. That object's going to have simple permissions, but the status code itself is going to have separate permissions. And we'll use an ISU to adjust that status code. So I can tell, hey, is this something that's currently under review, or is this something that is actually accepted? Let's take a look at what that would look like. And if you go back and look at the rescind KSS, you'll see the source code that I'm showing here. I'll get a link to it. This occurred to me that I probably should show you this in real code a little bit later in the morning, and I'll get you a link to this in the page. But what does this look like? I'm going to have a business object called worker recognition. You'll notice that it's got a status field here. The interesting thing about this status field is the security is BP demo object status. It's a separate object, separate security domain. What does that mean? That means that my worker can adjust these three fields, but can't change the status. So they can go in and make those changes. Does it obviate the after the fact changes that we saw with the simple? Well, unfortunately, no, it doesn't. Because I could still go in and change this recognition amount after the fact, even though I couldn't adjust the status. So there's still some loopholes here, but we've gone to the next level of security. What does this pattern look like? Well, we start off, we create an instance, and the code is created, or something that says, hey, this is a new thing, don't believe it just yet. We've got a manager who approves or not. If they deny, process ends, item stays at created. If the manager does approve, then we use an orchestration or some other means, but orchestration is the common way to do this, to update the code to accepted. My external systems only use the accepted codes. And then the edit process, now you have to ask yourself, what do I do with an edit? Do I create a new item? Do I go back and change this and then change the status code from accepted to edited, and then have to go back and redo this approval process, which you probably will. This is going to be open to whatever your user story really requires, but this is going to give us some pretty cool insights in how we can start to build this a little bit more carefully. What are the advantages here? Well, the advantages are obviously I've got a clear line between something that was created and something that's been accepted. And I can look at the record. I don't need to go to the audit logs. I can look at the record and say, okay, this record has been accepted. Are the fails as safe as what we're going to see later on? No, they're not. Because like I say, this is still an object, and I still need to give people the ability to change the, in this case, recognition amount that they needed to be able to, tell me what it was in the first place. The other challenge that this has is this often ends up with more instances in the object, because I'm going to have a bunch of created and denied items sitting inside of my model component business object. So it's created and denied, it stays at created status, it doesn't get deleted out. I would need a process to delete it out, and then there's all sorts of other challenges in code that go along with that. Why is that a concern? Well, more instances means my external systems are going to be looking and having to filter out all those extra created things as they are working on it. So this can be troublesome. It just makes things slower. It's not that anything's particularly wrong. It just, this has some drawbacks. All code is trade-offs, right? So let's get to what we're trying to see here. What we're trying to see now is the current and proposed design pattern. What we're going to do is we're going to build ourselves a proposed instance. We're going to send that for our manager approval. If the manager denies, the process ends and the proposed instance is abandoned. It's going to be in a separate model object from the current values, and that gives us some real advantages. Because what that means is when those external systems are using that current object, as I was just saying with the status code fields, they don't have to filter for it. The only values that they actually can see inside that current object are the current values. We're going to have that one row and just that one row, and that's all we need to care about. Once our manager is approved, we're going to use an orchestration to move the object, the information from proposed to current. What this gives us is this gives us the ability to have ourselves a discussion here. So this piece can all be safely hidden from whoever it is we're going to be talking this information about. So in my case, we're going to talk about commission percentages. If you want to give somebody a raise, adding commission percentage is a raise, you probably should talk about it before you tell them that this is under discussion. There are few things can destroy employee morale more than saying, hey, you're about to get a raise. Oh, no, you're not. That's not going to be a good day. But this allows you to have that conversation. This allows you to have that back and forth, those design discussions safely in a very different place with a completely separate security context. So this is going to be something between managers and senior management before you ever bring the worker into the conversation. The worker does not know that anything has changed until after the orchestration moves that relevant data. Once it goes from proposed to current, then the worker can see it, the external systems can see it. So then what happens? If I want to make a change, what do? Well, I'm going to take a current object and I'm going to propose a new item. That new item is going to change things, and then we're going to go through this whole process all over again. By controlling the current systems, the current object, entirely through the integration system user, that forces everything through the same process. That means that all those backdoor changes that we saw, that can't happen because we aren't going to give anybody access through that ISU. The only way to get to my object is through this process and through that particular orchestration. So what does the security setup look like? On the current object, so this is the thing that we're actually using, everyone gets view. We're going to let the whole world see this. We'll probably use employee itself so they can just see their own stuff where the ISU can modify and see everything. The current object is only going to show modify to that ISU, not to anything else. The proposed object, we can leave that wide open. We can leave that modify. I've got it set up so that managers can talk to, their managers and their staff as they need. But this can be pretty wide open because this proposed object is exactly that. It's a proposal. Nothing's going to get transacted on this. If you keep your ISU access close, this can be a really strong design pattern here. What you'll find is, and I think we want to talk just for a moment before I walk into the code. Why? Why would we do this? The answer is if you're in a situation where there are high repercussions to being wrong, where there's significant employee morale on the line, as I said, you don't want to be telling people that they're going to get a raise and then not give it to them. If there's going to be a business transaction that's based on this, think about promotions. If you're going to be doing like a mid-year promotion, this is a really good design pattern for it so that you can have that discussion behind the scenes and then pass that actual proposed object out into the current world. This allows you to do some very secure items when there's real consequences. Like I say, the simple setup works fine for most things. But when you get into the security setup for something that's got real consequences, sometimes you need to lock it down. And this is a really good way to lock it down. Thanks, Chris. So let's see what this looks like. I'm going to have two domains. I'm going to have one for managing commissions. This will be the current. And I've got one for managing commission proposals. So you'll notice that these have two very different security setups. And we'll see that the commission proposals are going to be pretty open. Lots of people can see these. Where managing the commissions are going to be much more locked down. This is only going to be writable by the ISU. However, lots of people will be able to see it. So I can use the data, I just can't change it. I'm going to show you. I just used the simplified ISU process to create an integration system user. If I look at the managed commissions domain, there you can see, hey, I've got modify on the ISSG and nothing else. The only way anything's getting into this particular object is if the ISU's actually running it. Whereas for the proposals, hey, my ISSG can write a modify, my manager can write a modify, and I've got implementer set up here to write and modify so I could clean up some data after the fact. This model object, I've got proposed items as well as current commission percentages. This is going to get fed into a business process. Business process is actually quite simple. I've got an approval step by the manager, and I've got an orchestration that is going to move things from the proposed object into the current object. Let's see what this looks like before I dig too far into that actual code. So let's proxy in again as Rachel Knight. Here, make me work for it. See if I care. I probably should have put a task on this, shouldn't have I? So now when I go to change a commission, as I'm Rachel now, let's pick up Aiden Mitzner here. Now, something I want to pause for a second and say, when you're doing current proposed items, visualization of what's current and what's proposed can be really tricky. Something that works really well here is you'll notice that I've used an area layout where I've got the proposed items on the left and I've got the current values on the right. You flip left and right, whichever way makes sense for your user story. But this is a really good way to manage it. This is a good way for you to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to do a proposal for Aidan Mitzler. As soon as I change something here, I can see he's currently getting 0.5% in commissions. Depending on how big the deals are, that can actually be a lot of money. So let's say I want to give him a pretty big raise. Let's go up to 0.75%. I'm going to give a proposal date for that, and it's Christmas. So what's going to happen now is I hit OK, and Rachel's items are now done. Let's start up a proxy and see Steve Morgan here. Because remember, we set up that approval on her boss. I've got a commission proposal here. I can see it's getting rounded up to 008. I probably just need to add one more decimal place onto that particular page. I hit approve. And now, if I were to go and look at those current commission percentages, what I'll see in here is I've got Aidan Mitzner here, and now that commission amount has been updated here. Now, how did I actually make that pass in here? Well, if we look at the orchestration, great question there, Paula. I'll talk on that one in just a second. If we look at this create commission percentages, all we're doing is we're getting an event target. So what we need to do is we need to pass this in from the BP. So I'm going to start off with the event target ID. And from that, I'm going to go get the target business object. So if I bounce in here, I probably need to stop that proxy, don't I? Yes, I do. And I go look at the business process definition. We can see that I'm running an orchestration. This is a BP triggered orchestration. And I'm passing in a single value, which is just the event target. There are other ways of doing this, but in this case, it just seemed easiest to mimic exactly what I was doing on the pages, where I get the event target and then pull out the item here. Yeah, Chris is stealing my line there. I will talk about that in just a sec, though. So now that I've got the BP item, I get the employee WIDs from those items. I check to see if the row exists and either create or update as needed. And then I complete a patch into the proposal item just to let the world know, hey, this one's been completed. If I want to make a change to Aidan's items, well, all I need to do is go back and make another proposal. If I bounce over here to the commission proposal page here, you'll see that I've made quite a few just as I was testing and hacking around on this for Aidan. As you can see, by playing around, we can do lots of cool stuff. But what does this mean? Let's step back, do the big picture for a second. This means that I have a place where I can accept lots of change. I can accept lots of discussion. I can control it separately from the visibility that I need to do my in-production pieces. This allows us a very useful level of abstraction so that my conversation between my managers can happen and be completed long before things get passed along with the actual usage of those values. So let me dive in. I 100% agree with Chris. Struggle to find the advantage of async works. Hot take is that override is always the answer now. That is largely true, but there are still some certain cases where I do use async orchestrations. As a general rule, if you're thinking async and you can trigger it appropriately, then yeah, I would use O4I. The only place where I find myself using asynchronous orchestrations anymore is in places where triggering an O4I because you need to go through the SOAP web service, there's no REST listener, would be inconvenient. So oftentimes, if I have something that's slightly longer running and I'm using a captive flow, so if I'm running a process that could take a long time, think AI call, that's going to take a minute, I can't run that even effectively in a synchronous using the synchronous design pattern. I'm going to run that with an async and then update a value when it's completed and then break out of the flow, like leave the user in a flow, let them do refreshes until it completes. And then when that async is completed, it updates a value and allows the user to exit the flow. In those cases, async work really nicely because you can trigger them comfortably from a page and you're staying entirely within the page processor. But for the bulk of the work items where I'm just trying to get 20 minutes of runtime, O4I 100%. Like integration framework makes things so much easier with notifications, with messaging, with file management. There's so many other things that it does well. As you can see in this case, I used a BP triggered. And again, I'm in a BP. If you're in a BP, probably should use a BP triggered orchestration. Kind of makes sense. But I would argue that async orchestrations are now very situationally specific, where they used to be pretty common. Now you'd actually have to have a very defined reason about why it would be harder to trigger an override for that. And using async orcs a lot was to get the extra time, honestly, because sync orcs are fired synchronously inside of pages, and that leaves you on a 25-second limit. Even though synchronous orchestrations can run up for up to 5 minutes, the 25-second limit can often cause problems, especially with longer running API calls. So we often did find ourselves using async orcs to get around those particular challenges. But nowadays, yeah, if you're just trying to use an orchestration to do data processing, absolutely use an O4I, 100%. And I mean, disk access alone is so awesome. Great question. No. To retrieve the results of an async orc, the user would need to stay on the page. Well, yeah, they need to stay in the session. But that doesn't have to be continuously in the session. To retrieve the results of an async orc, you just need to let them know when it's completed or present them the page when that data is actually there. So you can let them run away and do something else and then go back in and get to that page and see the data that's on it. They just won't know that it's done until they go check that page. And like I say, there's several design patterns that work very well with that. Like I say, I usually would just bring people into a self-referencing flow. That self-referencing flow just loops on itself, give them a little timer, let them know that something's changing, and then break out of that self-ref loop when the async's completed. Like I say, I use that a lot for AI calls. Great question. Any other questions? That's the rest of my conversation on commission percentages, current proposed, the nefariousness that'll get you on the naughty list with Workday Santa. Absolutely for headcount management. Yep. For things like riffs. This is a very common thing to do this sort of current proposed discussions so that you can have those discussions back behind the scenes before you actually present to the world. And there's often back and forth and lots of conversations that need to happen. And it allows you to have that conversation in a completely separate security context. So Sushma's got a question about when would we see some use cases with extend with FlowWise. I'm going to have to defer that to the Workday folks who'd actually know the the timeline better than I would. Yep. So I was on the webinar with Incubane. There's definitely some conversations going on. If I were guessing, because hey, I don't actually have any inside information on this one, so I'm allowed to guess. I expect at DevCon we'll see some very cool stuff coming with FlowWise. Mo, to answer your question, to bypass the security issue we're targeting here, couldn't we make the ISU in its own user-based security group so it could launch the integration? So in this case, I'm controlling it at the data level rather than at the integration level. Could you do that? Yeah, absolutely. That would totally work. Whereas with this case, even if you tried to get into the data behind the scenes using Bruno, as I was showing earlier, it's not going to let you. The data is controlled at the data level, not even at the integration level. Could you lock it at the integration and the BP levels too? Yeah, absolutely. Totally could. And again, at a BP, I know what you meant. At the BP level, could you? Absolutely. But in this case, I wanted to have that conversation and just show that that security context was at the BP level. And those people can talk without it ever being visible to the people at the end of that BP. Let's see here. Do I have a self-reference? My scratchpad? One moment. I'll see if. Vamshi, yes. If you had the ISU credentials and Postman, then yes, you absolutely could do that. However, and the big however on that is ISU credentials should never be shared. So in that case, yes, if those ISU credentials got out, then yeah, you could absolutely make those changes and that would likely be bad. But that would be a security breach. That's not actually working as designed. That's somebody's successfully hacked your system. That's not a good day. So generally speaking, yeah, I wouldn't be too fussed about that. If those ISU credentials get out, that would be a problem. But in this case, and I know ISU credentials get used a bunch out there, and yeah, that happens. In this case, make this a single ISU for this single purpose and don't share those credentials. Let me see if I've got a self-referencing flow in this. Yeah. So to those who are looking for what a self-referencing flow would look like, so this is literally what we're doing because I was showing this to somebody else for a proof concept. So I collect some intake information. My next page here is wait for response. So I collect the information. This wait for the collect intake page fires an async orchestration. I wait for a response on this. I go to this wait for response page. Now there's two transition elements here. If the flow variable checklist counts, so basically if my checklist has returned any values, so if I look inside this flow variable and that checklist count is greater than 0, I go to the complete step. And if it's not, I bounce back to the wait for response step. So Alan, Raju, does that answer your question? Is that what you're looking for? Could you bounce back to the collect intake step? Absolutely. So in this case, I'm going from the wait for response page back to the wait for response page. But if you really wanted to go all the way back to the beginning, as Vizini said, then yeah, you could totally go all the way back up here. But then you'd actually be re-triggering, and you'd probably never be able to get out of this particular loop in that case. But yeah, you can absolutely go back to any step in the flow. That's correct. Well, so every time the user wants to check on this wait for response page step, they have to click OK. And on this wait for response page, what it does is it goes out and looks to see if my async orchestration has updated a data value. In this case, it's just updating a count. And it's just going to wait for that until this then completes. When
Very
it gets it,
similar.
so
A
go ahead,
very
Chris.
similar pattern to the way integrations work, where you have the parent and all the sub processes, and you have to click a button, and it's the same thing, right? It's just some asynchronous process. It's querying the results.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure I even changed the edit button bar to say refresh. Yeah, Wesley, auto update, I'm not sure that's going to happen. That's a pretty big change to the Workday framework. And Vamshi, to your question, we separated proposed and current for security purposes. Is that correct? Yes. It allowed us to have two different security contexts between my proposal and the current value. The current value gets used by some process, in this case, calculating commissions. The proposal is a conversation that happens between my managers so they can discuss wage hikes, changes and raises and stuff, all that stuff behind the scenes before presenting it to the user. Could you call the new orchestration API tools? Yeah, for sure. Would you be able to check for status on that? Yep, definitely. Do I have that handy? Here we are. So this is the response that you'd actually be getting back from that, and you'd look for a success call on it. I've used a BP triggered here, but this would allow you. This is the one that the run that you just saw. You check for that success, and that would allow you to go back and look for it. But you'd have to be careful that if you had lots of users, that you're lining up the correct latest run to the session that you're in, which could be tricky. So I would more consider this a tenant observability item, but I'm curious to see where this goes too. I only just started playing with this yesterday, so I'll be curious to see what we can actually make happen with it. So yeah, good idea there, Alan. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any more questions, and thanks everybody for staying into the Sukshma. Is there a way to effective date model objects like custom objects? No, there is not. And there has been a long-standing conversation about that, and I'm not expecting that anytime soon. there's challenges with the Workday framework. And if you remember what the custom objects and the custom BP problems that we had about 5 years ago, we went a long way down that road. I'm not expecting it. Awesome question, though. Not throwing any more questions. So thanks, everybody. Have yourselves a great day. You okay if I close her up there, Chris?
Yep. Shut her down.